Right. Okay. So Joanne, I just
Okay.
wanted to appraise everybody of the situation because I by default I am the I guess the coordinator in terms of the presenters. So our thing is to get all the presenters into the room. So I've just alerted Billy Howell to try and get back in so that we can hear his testimony. Also, we have Rastafari Lawn we're going to hear from. So our thing is to have our presenters here so that we can formally start the proceedings. But the main reason, let me give a quick overview while we're waiting for Billy. The main reason why we're gathered here is not only to commemorate Leonard Howell's birthday, which is June the 16th, as we know. And he was born in 1898, by the way. So, technically it's the 122nd anniversary of his birthday. But also to look at his contribution to Pinnacle, his contribution, and importantly, not only his contribution, but the devastation and the trauma suffered by himself and the Howellites when Pinnacle was destroyed. And I want us, and this is important from the perspective of internal reparations, because we have to look at some of the atrocities that have occurred internally in Jamaica, as well as focusing on external atrocities. When I say external, I mean external reparations. The issue of the transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans is undoubtedly one of the greatest atrocities ever, I would say, to happen on this planet. And that certainly needs to be addressed. And the enduring legacy and enduring indelible stain of systematic and institutional racism, which we see is manifesting even today with the death of George Floyd, the death of Mr. Brooks, and countless others. We're seeing it with our own eyes. But all said and done, though, for us here in Jamaica,
Temperature.
and looking at the issue of Leonard Howell,
That means it wasn't working properly.
okay, yeah, I'm gonna ask people to mute their mics possibly, so we only have one voice at a time. So we have the issue of Leonard Howell and the Howellites, and the issue of Pinnacle, which was um, a self-sustaining community. They grew most of the crops they needed to eat. They reared goats, they reared chickens, and so forth. They also grew ganja. And ganja was a cash crop for them, and they did make a pretty good amount of money from that. So economically, they were thriving. But it was on the pretext of ganja that there was a raid on Pinnacle in 1954, and there was subsequent raids after that, or I should say an eviction. Formal eviction really took place in 56, from what I've gathered, and then there was a final eviction in 58. But I'd like Billy to speak to that, and I'm wondering if he's managed to get into the chat room. But Billy can give a personal perspective on the raids that happened at Pinnacle during the course of the 50s, because it wasn't just the raid in 54, which was a very traumatic in itself, because crops were burned, and there was significant damage done to the properties. But it was also, there were other raids on Pinnacle, and ultimately eviction of everybody who was on the land at the time. And as I said, Billy can speak to that, and the trauma that was involved in that. And we need to really visit if this was, from a inhumane situation, which I think it was. And what were the motives in the eviction and so forth? I think we need a closer look at that. And we then need to discuss whether or not there is a case for internal reparations for the Howellites who suffered firsthand the trauma of the eviction. at Pinnacle. So, Billy, are you in the chat room at all?
Hello?
Yeah. Are you there,
Hello?
Billy? Okay. You're here. Hello? Oh, is that Jelani trying to come in? Okay,
Yeah, Michael, I seem to have lost connectivity.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm glad you're here now, because you could probably add a little bit to what I was saying about the raids on Pinnacle and the travesty, because I want to make sure Billy is in the room, because he's new to Zoom. So, you know, this wasn't a good experience for him trying to get in for the first time and then encountering these problems. But now that the room has opened up, I want to ensure that he's in the room. So I need to just momentarily.
He appears as a participant, though. He's in the participant list.
Hello.
Oh, he's there, Billy. Yes, you're here.
Yes.
Great, good.
Things and blessing to everyone.
Yes.
Oh yes, I am here, Mike, and I finally got through.
Good. So I'm going to give you the floor now, Billy, for the next 10, 15 minutes or so to enlighten people what happened.
I'll just take it free, and I don't know where to start. I'll just start with my name. My name is Bill Howell. I am the son of Leonard Howell, as you know. I was born at Pinnacle in 1942. I lived there until I was 16, and then I was thrown out physically. Practically. Police came up with my father's stuff, my stuff, and
all right.
That was in 54.
Somebody's mic, sorry, Bill, somebody's mic is on. Could people just mute their mics, please? Just check it, because I just want Billy alone to be speaking. We're getting a lot of background noise. So whoever's mic is on, please, yeah. Billy, proceed. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm going to mute my mic as well.
I was just giving you, it's a slight part of the whole experience. As I said, that's my story. The main story here, I think, is, hello? Are you hearing me, Michael? Hello?
I'm hearing you fine, Billy. I just muted my mic, and
okay.
I'm just asked everyone else to mute their mic except for you, so that we don't get any background noise, and you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So go ahead and.
I'll speak about Pinnacle. Pinnacle, the largest village in Pinnacle was called East Avenue. We're probably about 4,000 people live. I have a diagram which I draw. I explain in there where the different houses and the different formation of the houses were. In 1954, the police came up and they made one of the biggest ganja raids, as the world knows there. And about 300 people was arrested. 4, I don't remember exactly how much. I know a lot went to prison. A lot of young kids went to prison that had nothing to do with marijuana. A lot of men there was there planting marijuana, but not everyone that was arrested had marijuana. And then the police just came in and just grabbed a number of people and they said, you know, they find so much weed there that they said, this belongs to you and this belongs. And a proportion of the people went to prison. Young 16-year-old girl went, I remember, create havoc in the place. All the minds, the bright people in the place, all were arrested and went to prison. I mean, this is coming out to the end of Pinnacle now. We existed before for 16 years, living there peacefully. Now, in 1956, that's when physically my father and myself and my older brother was evicted from Pinnacle. This truck, I said, came up, brought in this trailer behind it, put our stuff in it, and put it outside, and they said, we are evicted. And I'm just cutting a long story short and just editorializing it. And finally, in 1957 and 58, police, I am not 100% that police were there, I think they were, but gangs came up to Pinnacle. I don't know if they were accompanied by police, as I said, and they burned the entire village down. people built back after the police left. People tried to build back as much as they could, and they came back again in 57 and burn everything and trample and destroy. And so all those people who were living in Pinnacle from 1940 when the first moved there up until 1957, they lost everything. No one ever told the story. That story I've never reported in the newspaper, in the Gleaner, which was following every step my father made in Jamaica. If you go to the archive and Google Howell, the amount of time he is referenced in the Gleaner, everything he did was a news story. And then after we left Pinnacle, his name like ceased to appear in the newspaper. It's almost, I think, probably 2 or 3 other times. I don't remember 3, I remember 2 other between 56 and 79 before his name would appear back in the paper. Like 3 instances in between that. Whereas his name would appear in the newspaper before that. Every week. Okay, one other, I should tell you first, how we got Pinnacle. When my father returned from the United States back to Jamaica in 1932, he started preaching his philosophy, Rastafari. Okay, it was such a strange thing that he was thought of as a habit. Everyone said, this man is crazy. How can someone, an emperor, another man be God? How is this possible? But my father, he was a very religious man, and he could prove in the Bible where he saw these things. I forget the verses now. I could tell you how he came to his conclusion that the emperor was to be looked up on as somebody other than the normal human being. And my mind is running in so many different places, but anyway, moving on, when he came back to America and started it, all the authorities knew of him. There's newspaper articles spread all over, telling you who this man was, what was he saying. Then he got followers, and then the followers got bigger, and they tried to suppress him, and the followers got bigger.
So I want to make sure that
okay, and his organization was being attacked by every forces in Jamaica, by the local government, by their superior, the British colonial government, and the Jamaican government, plus plus the locals as well, who did not find his teaching that man is God quite palatable to their taste. So they would always be, trying to hurt those who call themselves Rasta. After a lot of problem with attacks and stuff like that, he decided that he was going to get his own place. He was, after in Kingston riots again in Montego Bay, several times people were attacked, his places were stoned, they stole his stuff. He decided to buy this property with the help of my mother, who sold all her jewelry and then made a down payment on this land called in the Slaterville Hills. We moved there in 1940, and we started there with nothing, cut the place down, build houses and build. And then after living there every year, the place progressed more and more and more. We have a million different things that we were involved in. You name it. We were doing it. We were enterprising every year. Exponentially, our growth was bigger the next year and bigger. And then in the 50s, when we really started to push, really, if the crop had came in 1950, I'm telling you, we would have got money to buy the entire government. At that time, I was also mention something about ganja, how ganja was planted and things. It's not that my father was giving orders to people to plant ganja. The men, they were doing their own thing. Each person was at their own field was planting. My father had nothing to do with it. He might have gotten something from the proceed, I don't know. In fact, I was almost sure that he did. But it was basically local men transacting their business and planting their stuff and selling it. True. And that was the reason they used to basically shut Pinnacle down. That said, Pinnacle was only there to plant ganja. And ganja almost became accidental crop in Pinnacle. I mean, everyone smoked back then. Who smoked didn't. It wasn't. But after the 51 storm, we had a terrible situation. All the houses in Pinnacle was knocked down. So to get back on their feet, these men decided to do a cash crop of marijuana in 52. And that came in and bringing a good amount of money. So they tried again in 53 and in a wider scale, and they planted the whole back of Pinnacle with marijuana. And I remember plane would be circling overhead, searching. I don't know searching. We just look up and they were playing. We didn't pay attention. But now I realize that they had probably aerial photograph of crops being grown. Anyway, as I said, the raid took part in 54, and the other people on there in 56 that came back and burned the village of Pinnacle, and 57 another raid again there, totally alienated. But at the same time, my father moved to the back of Pinnacle and had a little commune, a little house at the back and the rear near to the Rastafari River. And he maintained a base there, and he would come to Kingston. He's lived in Kingston for different times. Sometimes he stayed with me. But there's one place he stayed for quite a long time was South Camp Road, just behind Sabina Park. From the roof, you could actually watch the field. You could watch a game from the field of the building that it was staying in. I think the number was 40. Anyway, to go on with, I don't know what part I should pick up now. The dispute of the property. Initially, when my father bought the property from a Chinese gentleman by the name of Albert Chong, he probably would have problem buying it in his own name. At the time, he was so famous, whatever you want to call it, that he had someone as a middleman, who was a friend of my mother. Albert Chong was a friend of my mother. And they arranged that Albert Chong would buy the property and then immediately sell it back to my father for a small profit. Anyway, I think he bought the property for $900 and then sold it to my father for $1,200. Both my father and my mother could only come up with $800 at the time. And that was used as a down payment with a promise to pay an additional $400 as the balance in whatever time was agreed on. That money was paid. He received a receipt, but police would raid our property I would say, every so often. 16, 17 for the, I don't remember how many times, but all our papers were taken out. The receipt for the final $400 was taken, as I said, from Pinnacle by when one of the police raiders all property. Any written document in the house would be taken out and never to be returned. Anyway, at a later date, I think in 46, there was some argument that we did not possess, we didn't own Pinnacle because we did not pay. Albert Chong died, by the way, in 46. Then we heard that he had a title. The title wasn't put in my father's name because he was a friend of my, this is get all complicated now. He was a friend of my mother, but my mother had died in 43, and my father was blamed for her murder, which is ridiculous. So he became an enemy of my father. My father, they had a trial, and my father was found not guilty. He wasn't there. He had nothing to do with it. They were just trying to get him involved in it. Anyway, he was cleared. But there's a bitterness that existed between my father and Albert Trump. And he never did sign the title over in my father's name. And that becomes the thing. Everyone know we own it at that time. But later on, that was the guys they used to disinherit us and get us off the property. And let's say for friends relevant to it. But the property was stolen from us. Anyway, if anyone have any questions, it's like I'm open to questions if anyone wants to ask me anything.
All right, we'll allow 2 questions for now, but I just want to say the question and answer segment will be after.
Okay, so I'm sure someone else will speak. Want to speak now?
Okay, well, let me just ask, because I can't see all of the participants in terms of if they're raising their hands, but if somebody has an urgent question now, you could probably raise your hand. I'm not seeing anyone. All right. Okay, so what we'll do right now is we'll have Ras Miguel on. You can present. Oh, Billy, that's great. We weren't seeing you before in all your glory. All right, technology. So Ras Miguel Lord, I'm going to give you the floor to present the legal, give a legal perspective on the internal reparations for the whole lights. Could you please?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was there any information? Oh yeah, the bill. Yes, all those documents were just taken from us, or confiscated, or as I said, every scrap of paper, books, more than, and it was all taken in the name of subversive. So they knew what they took from us. They knew that what we didn't have. And when we come to present it in court, we did not have all this information. So, I mean, there wasn't, but we didn't know how the ending went, because lawyers in Jamaica, oh my God, I'm ashamed to say this, Jamaica have some of the most corrupt lawyers in the planet. My father spent his fortune getting lawyers every week. He spent it, he was giving away money like bucketful of, I mean, to get lawyers. They did not file the papers they were supposed to file. They were in league with the government, colonial government. He was being double crossed, triple crossed. What we never officially get a reason for losing the place. We just hear that our name was not on the title, and we did not. After living there for 16 years, I mean, 4,000 people, we were doing business with the government, we were interacting with the government, and all of a sudden, I mean, it's like, okay, I'll give you a big part of this now. The emperor was invited to Jamaica. Everyone in the island knew my father, name and Rasta. He was the man that invented Rasta, he bring Rasta into existence. He came to Jamaica, and no one invited him.
I hope you're recording this.
No one invited him, tried to get in touch with him. Either he himself, me, Monte, his organization, or nothing. It's like he did not exist. His name did not appear in the newspaper against the emperor's name. The man that started Rasta was totally slapped in the face by non-recognition, almost written from history. Is in the early, I don't know, 50 or 60. Some people started to write about him, Hill and what have you. For all they know, he was this idiot who he wasn't recognized. Then the government again, they wrote a book at UA, yeah, Michael, at UA, that have, I think, 26 lies, like proven lies in their description of it. They did not send anyone to Pinnacle to investigate what it looked like. They did not have a conversation with anyone that lived at Pinnacle. All their information was people said things that they heard about Pinnacle. But in the universe, they are totally, that my father had 13 wives there living there. We had dogs. I have a list of the inaccuracy in the portrayal of life of Pinnacle or what Pinnacle was about. You know, just like Buster Monkey, who on several occasions write letters to the authority, to this colonial government, stating that my father should be put in jail or sent to the asylum, which they sent him to in 38, I think, 38 or 39. He spent a couple of months there. The way they claimed that he was insane, but because he had lawyers and he had money and clout, they had to release him. I think it's, I don't remember, 9 months. I don't remember what time, but under a year he spent in the asylum when my mother ran the organization. Okay, one of his source of income was he started a bakery in Kingston in the 30s, back in 34, and it became an immediate success. The three other bakeries was built over other areas in the city. And I mean, he was raking it in. He was doing a fantastic business, a bakery. He also had a newspaper. And he started an organization called Ethiopian Salvation Society. That is the name in which he bought the property. The property was supposed to be bought under the name of the Ethiopian Salvation Society. Well, no title was ever made out to that organization, they claim, or to Howell, so the property don't belong to us. After my mother sold all her jewelry, that other famous connotation here, where a number of years earlier, she was living, I think my father was in the asylum, that's the time they sent my father to the asylum. And then she came home one day from visiting or wherever and found the house ransacked and things thrown all over the place that someone came in the house and burglarized it. But at the time, everyone suspected and almost was certain that it was the authority who came in and just to scare her and show her that they know where they live. It was sure, it was certain that the police or the whatever security forces were doing this. Anyway, that didn't take anything. Our jewelry was there, our jewelry box was there, and it was full of jewelry. And no thief would come inside of a house and come out without taking anything. So we know that it wasn't a burglary. It was more a warning, like, keep your head down, we know where you live. But that did not stop him. So he still went on with his preaching. At one stage, even the governor of Jamaica stopped him from, personally take out and add in the newspaper, Medina, stopping Howell from preaching his Rasta idea, philosophy, what you want to call it. I will also tell you this. The conspiracy to defame and degrade Rasta continued up until even in the 50s, I just got an article from the British press, where the British government was working with the Ethiopian embassy to have the emperor come out and say, he is not a god. I think this took place between Governor Lightburn and Governor Foote. It was during those two gentlemen reign as governor in Jamaica. There was collaboration between the Jamaican government, British government, and people in the Ethiopian government. I think Cairo, the ambassador in Cairo, was planning to have the embassy denounce Howell that he didn't know anything about Howell, and that he is not. Anyway, that is just some of the trials and tribulation that I went through. But as a kid growing up, I didn't realize who this man was, but now I really appreciate who he was. He was the first civil rights leader in the Western world, or in the world. Mahatma Gandhi came years after him. Martin Luther King was just in the 50s. But this man, it was tweaking the British nose from to return to Jamaica in 30. Started his preaching. And in my days in Jamaica, I didn't get any recognition. Oh, okay. One other misconception again, as to Garvey's association with Rasta. Garvey was a friend of my father. They were good friends, great friends, and admired each other. But Garvey was a Christian. Garvey believed in, I think it was a Methodist. Tell my father, don't you preach at any of my meetings. I am a man of Christ and I believe in Christ. And my father said, no, the Emperor is the man I am interested in giving all my praise and glory to. So they had a dispute on that thing. And so, but as I said, they remained friends until Garvey died in England. So they correspond with each other. Now, when I'm saying these things, these are not just things I'm saying. I have proof that all these behind the scene things work out. Letters from the Secret Service, from the British, within the British Secret Service, that there was actually almost 25-hour surveillance of Howell. And anything that he sent or received from overseas, he was in contact with all these foreign leaders, Joe McKenyatta, Padmore in England, this one that later became president of Ghana, what's his name again? Nkrumah. They were very good friends. They write each other quite a lot. And, but in Jamaica, he didn't get the respect that he was always prosecuted or being taken advantage of by crooked lawyers. So the story is still not told. There's a lot of loose and there's a lot of things that I don't begin to broach this subject of the existence and life of people and the trauma. People just lose their livelihood and all their things and got nothing for it.
All right. Yes, Billy. All right. Give thanks. Yeah. So I'm going now to ask Ras Miguel Lon to come in and make his presentation. But thank you very much for your testimony.
Oh, sorry, I was a bit, probably I have nothing written down, just anyway.
That's fine. Yes, we give thanks. Thank you, Billy. All right, great. Ras Miguel Lon, are you there? We'll have you come in, and I'm going to ask the secretariat if they could, mute the necessarily people and have the speakers, be facilitated. Thank you.
Yes, I will give thanks. I don't know if you all hearing me now. All right, give thanks.
Good.
Right. Now, in terms of reparations for Rastafari, certainly the persecutions that Brother Leonard Howell went through, they are so glaring, so obvious, that those in itself would constitute reasons for reparatory justice. The charges were obviously false, Sedition, charging him for sedition because him, let us put it this way, because him bonfire upon Queen Victoria, because him bonfire upon King George. People do that so regularly these days. There'll be so many people charged. So the charges were fictitious. The charges were false that they carried Brother Leonard Howell through. Secondly, the trials were grossly unfair. And I've often cited that trial out in St. Thomas before Robert William Lyle Grant, This was a man who came from Malawi. At that time, it was Nyasa land. And there he tried many of John Chilimbe followers. John Chilimbe followers, and along with John Chilimbe, they were resisting the British imposition of the white God concept. The Scottish and the British came over to Nyasa land and they were spreading Christianity along the lines that you must worship the white God. These African brothers and so on says, no, no, our God is black. And for that they were persecuted. John Chilimbe was killed, but his followers were put on trial. And the same judge who tried Leonard Howell was the one who tried a lot of his followers and naturally found them guilty. So here is a man who was suppressing black people in Africa who were fighting for their black identity. And he comes to Jamaica now. He leaves his Chief Justice chambers. He leaves the Chief Justice Court in Kingston, goes specifically out in St. Thomas to try Leonard Howell. And Leonard Howell's principle was, I hail Rastafari. Haile Selassie is the returned Messiah and the supreme God. That man, there was no way Leonard Howell could have gotten a fair trial out in St. Thomas. So the jury didn't take long, based on the directions which Robert Lyle Grant gave. And in less than 25 minutes, they found him guilty out there and imprisoned him. So these are glaring examples. The seizure of his properties. Bill has mentioned some of the properties and the chinangering that took place with regards to Pinnacle, which we must continue to fight in a much more global, in a much more organized way to get back Pinnacle. We don't business about who put house on it and all of that. The principle of Pinnacle must be returned to the Rastafari community. Not 1 lot, not 6 lots, not 10 lots, the entire Pinnacle. And we can win it. We can go after it and win it because we now have evidence that Bill has given. Bill can give this evidence, if not before a local court, certainly before an international court, to know that Pinnacle was stolen from Rastafari. Because everything Brother Leonard Howell had, he made it quite clear it was for Rastafari. He never had a personal kingdom. Everything he had was for the community. There were other properties. There were properties out at Outlook Avenue in Rockfort there. There were properties on East Queen Street. Bill has mentioned there were also properties off South Camp Road. All those properties were systematically stolen and taken, not by individuals. If they were taken by individuals, it had the support of the system, of the government. And why I said it had the support of the government, I recall being in court just by accident in the about 1980, 81 thereabouts, when Edgar Reed was under Edgar Reed and some of the members of the Howell Foundation, Howellites, they were brought to court. They were summoned to court in Spanish Town. And they were summoned on the basis that they were living on Pinnacle illegally. No, this is 1980, I don't know. This property was bought way back from 1939, occupied from 1940. Edgar Reed, as we all know, was he was like one of the right hand of Brother Leonard Howell. And he was in court, and I mean, he stood out so majestic, he stood out so well. And I'll never forget when he told Miss Parker, who was the magistrate, that she was sitting on Mr. Howell's land because Mr. Howell's land was from shore to shore and from sea to sea. And when she asked him, am I sitting on Mr. Howell's land? He said, oh, sure, Your Honor. They carried that confidence, that boldness. So how then could persons get ownership of Howell's land on the basis of a prescriptive title? St. Jago Development, they got the land on the basis that they occupied this land unmolested for a certain amount of time. How could they, when in the 1980s, they were bringing Edgar Reed, of all persons, to court that he was squatting on the land, and the judge ordered their eviction. So the private sector, along with the government, there was a complicity to deprive Rastafari because it suited them. And therefore, you know, it can be traced. It can be traced that the Howellites were chased from St. Thomas. They were chased from St. Thomas. They came to Kingston. Brother Howell set up the Kings of King Mansion. They were chased from Kingston. They went up to Pinnacle. Our brothers and sisters were chased from Pinnacle to Backawall, Shantytown. They were chased from Backawall and Shantytown by Joe Williams and Siaga. They ended up at Spanish Town and over at Riverton City. So it showed how our brothers and sisters were constantly hounded, constantly pursued. And it's along that lines that I think we really should mount a serious reparatory justice on behalf of Rastafari, but it would be led by the Leonard Howell Foundation, championed by some of the family members which we have now, that I think that we should get at some point reparatory justice.
Could I ask a question? Can my voice be heard?
Yes, we're hearing you, yes.
Okay. What if we can convince any one of this government that although we speak of the Jamaica government, it's a different government now from the colonial government that existed then. They knew about the collaboration that the Jamaican government did back in that time against Howell. I have proof that they were taking his goods. Couldn't the British government be responsible for some of this? Couldn't we take it to the British instead of just looking for the Jamaican government for reparation? It was actually the British governments who were doing it. Couldn't to go to the British instead of going to the and try to get reparation from Jamaica? We try to get it from England, because England was the one who was masterminding the whole thing.
A very good question, Billy, very good, and I'll answer it this way. In about 2000, 2001, when a group of us sued the Queen of England for reparations generally, the Jamaican government were the ones who intervened and sent lawyers, the Solicitor General and all of them, to represent the Queen of England. So the Jamaica government protecting, if you sue the Queen now, if you go after the British government now, the Jamaica government is going to intervene to protect the British government. That is how
it's not the government, it's the government pre-independence, right? So it's a different mentality. Those people are different, we are different, right? We are creeping our brothers now.
No, but we're not independent. We're not independent.
From the Secret Service that, you know, all this communication was going there behind that they were taking our stuff, what they were doing to us. So I think the big, I don't know, I'm saying the Jamaican job, but I think England, more than Jamaica, is to be blamed because Jamaica wasn't doing it for it. Yeah, they were doing it for his own good because Buster hated my father. But
yeah, no, I'm in agreement with you, Billy, but what I'm saying is,
the fire?
Based on the example that we tried, and based on the fact that because I, for one, went out of my way to serve the documents on the Queen. I went personally at King's House because I didn't want to get at the Jamaica government. And I made sure we filed a lawsuit when the Queen was in Jamaica. So I wanted to get at her. But the Jamaica government put a shield around her and took over the matter. So if we were to do this, the Jamaica government is going to do the same thing.
Couldn't do it and get away with it today. This is a different time we are in, I think.
But this is 2000, Billy. It's 2000 is we sued, you know. This is modern time right now.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna interject now, just because I want to open it up for the wider audience. But I have to admit that we do have a constitutional crisis of sorts, because you raise a good point, Ras Miguel. The Queen is still our head of state. So if one actually agitates against the Queen, we're agitating against our head of state. So the notion of our independence has to be revisited. So this is critical, and is open for discussion. But I want to see if we can two things. One, actually, I don't know if Jelani is still there on the floor. Yes, I see him. Jelani, would you like to just put everything into context as a discussion, and then we just open it up to question and answers, please? I think we could just do that.
All right, Michael. Thank you. And yeah, greetings, everyone. Greetings, Brother Billy, Brother Miguel, and others who have joined us.
Blessings, my brother.
I think that it is good that we have paused once more to recognize Leonard Howell. Are you hearing me?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
I'm hearing you, July. Hello?
Yeah, I am. Yes, give thanks. I've heard you. And I'm saying, yes, give thanks for the moment that we pause, even 122 years later, to look at the significance of this Jamaican son. And the remarks that I have to make are more in keeping with what I feel comfortable engaging with as a assessment of what has been said, and to put my own inflection there. I think that the question of who is responsible for creating or safeguarding the contributions of non-political figures, even those who have political consequences by virtue of their actions, becomes a central question that we're engaging with continuously, not just with Leonard Howell, but in relation to ordinary folk, Rastafari being one of those huge contributors who will honor us, if not us. Perhaps with the exception of His Imperial Majesty when he came here in 1966, and he chose to recognize contributions from the brethren by honoring 12. We have not necessarily seen a process of honoring those who have made this kind of contribution, which we now recognize are not only enduring, but are felt across not just Jamaica, but internationally. So it is really a question as to how we develop on the honor that is worthy of someone like Howell, who I would argue, I would support Marty's projection of him as perhaps one of the most important, if not the genesis of the civil rights conversation that we see in this hemisphere. I know certainly his approach to community and to critiquing British colonialism are unsurpassed as far as applied theory. So we understand that much of what he represents is a further expression of Marcus Garvey, but in a sense, his enduring legacy today in the range of legatees that we see making claim to him. And I think that's an important terrain that we have in looking at Rastafari and how cultural histories and legacies become significant among us. So where Leonard Howell is concerned, we have the immediate family, which is very present and very much engaged in how to safeguard their father's contribution. We also have a remnant of his original congregation by way of the Howellites, who are still around and in fact are renewing by way of their ability to engage younger persons as a part of their remnant congregations. There's the general Rastafari community that I I named separately from the Howeyites, as much as they are part of that wider family of Rastafari. And then there is the Jamaican people as a total. And I think Leonard Howell's contribution is not one just for the Howeyites, the family, and Rastafari, but indeed a contribution that extends beyond to the Jamaican people in general. Now, in saying this, the idea of how he has been damaged by the colonial state as well as the contemporary state is really what we're trying to assess. And I would argue that some tangible aspects of that damage would be his trial, the fact that he was tried and convicted of crimes that we now aspire to achieve still, which is an appropriate decolonization after an extended period of colonial subjugation. He was found guilty of engaging in liberation, African liberation. So I think some sort of expungement should be a part of our conversation as it relates to the way he is remembered or upheld. I think also, and Brother Billy mentioned to us that Howell was nowhere present at the visit of His Majesty. And even among Rastafari, I would argue that he is not as well known as he ought to be. It shouldn't take a Rastafari scholar to know of the existence of Leonard Howell. It should be a part of the ABC vocabulary of the movement, and it isn't. That framework, that foundation, that template, which we still work with in many ways, set by him, is one that needs to be as elevated and leveraged as we would see a Bob Marley's legacy or a Mortimer Planner legacy or any of the contributors, but decidedly known that this is the patriarch who overturned the society and confronted and suffered for us to manifest and express our faith in this way. So in keeping with that, I think a posthumous national award or contribution or recognition of contribution for Leonard Howell is something that we should argue for in this reparatory conversation. I think his name should be as well known to Jamaicans as we hold up, people like Louis Bennett, Coverley, Count Ozzy, known for his work with music, or the political leaders like Bustamante, Norman Manley. Or more important, he should be as fabled as a Chief Tacky or a Three-Finger Jack or a Bedward in the spoken common narratives and reference points as an important iconic start to what we still have today as Rastafari. So what I'm saying is that he is indeed what Garvey had hoped for in terms of the African or big affairs in a way that we as a Rastafari congregation still aspire towards, his sustainable community enterprise examples are still unsurpassed by us, at least in Jamaica as we speak. So in saying this, I would hope that in thinking of a reparatory conversation surrounding Leonard Howell, we're not just concerned with the tangible legacies that we would like to ensure they're safeguarded, but there are some intangibles, and I just want to close off by making some suggestions as to the kind of things that I'm talking about. I think a contributor like Howell deserves a multi-tiered platform for accessibility to all age groups. so that the Jamaican people understand that Rastafari is rooted on a serious, what we understand as sociological or socio-political engagement and solution. So at higher levels, there is need for unpacking, engaging, and theorizing around him in the way that we're seeking to do around Garvey in the contemporary space and time, but also introduce at the lowest levels of the school system, you know. So it would be wonderful to have the promise key for children, for example, as a sellable way of introducing them to post-colonial critique through example that they can identify with. You know, a country boy from Clarendon who, you know, through his journeys, 122 years later, we're still recognizing the work that he has brought. So yeah, the various sites, and this, in closing, I would more generalize now our cultural heritage and the tangible aspects of those legacies are variously at risk within our community. You know, the elevated leaders, perhaps with the exception of Bob Marley, has little security of legacies in the way that we have seen a global development of the Marley energy and work. And, you know, I think Leonard Howell allows us to recognize that these contributions from regular people, I mean, we're looking at a contribution that is now in its 90th year of endurance with no sight of waning. But in fact, the fear among the detractors is that it seems ever expanding and ever growing, especially among young people. So this type of service has to, it deserves the kind of recognition that we see of, you know, inscriptions at their place of birth for their community to know that out of these hamlets came these kinds of individuals. Their sites that they developed, we need to ensure that the evidence of their work is not just maintained but expanded in productive ways. Where Howell is concerned, Brother Miguel mentioned the range of equity that he had across Kingston and the surrounding parishes. And those things, I think, you know, through a National Heritage Trust working along with us, must not just be inscribed as aspects of Rastafari pride, but safely absorbed as major national contributions. I think I can stop there, Michael.
All right.
I allow it to open up.
Thank you, Jelani. Yeah, because although we started late, we are operating with some time restrictions. So I'm trying to be sensitive to that. And I know, you know, people will have questions and so forth. So we have a lot of food for thought there on the table. I just to put in my 2 cents though, one of the unfinished projects, and it's unfortunate, but I think it can be resolved, is the tangible cultural heritage at Pinnacle. I think, to be honest with you, that we would be moving forward if lots were actually declared, additional lots to the one that has been declared. And I think, if nothing else, those of us who are associated with the Leonard Percival Howell Foundation can certainly try to help towards additional lots being declared. And we have to probably, you know, public information mission of sorts to the wider audience in Jamaica to say what this could bring to Jamaica and even to Rastafari, because the fact of the matter is that we only have one lot declared formally right now, and some people in the movement don't seem to be aware of this actual reality. So within the Rastafari movement in Jamaica, there needs to be a discussion nationally about the declaration of Pinnacle heritage site, what is there, certainly. I envisage some of the Great House even being restored to what it was before, and a couple of houses probably built that would resemble the houses that used to be there at the Howell, at the Pinnacle site. So a small section dedicated to like a sort of reshaping, well, not reshaping, but trying to actually, yeah. Absolutely, to try and give people a feel for what Pinnacle actually was like at the time. I think there's some value in that, so that when people come into the site, they get a sense of the past, and then also we can have something of the present. We have a tabernacle there right now, which encapsulates the Nyabingi center of worship. We could have something that represents Baba Shanti. We could have something that represents other mansions. So people get a holistic view of the Rastafari movement from where it originated in the past to where it is today, because it's evolved, right? It evolved. Even the major mansions we have now, which is Nyabingi, Baba Shanti, and 12 tribes, they came later on in the movement. They came about from really the 40s onwards, but we always leave out generally the first generation of the movement, the people who were led by not only Leonard Howell, but Joseph Hibbert, Archibald Dunkley. Now, incidentally, none of the first generation leaders got medals from His Majesty. I think because for whatever reason, they were overlooked. Leonard Howell, obviously, after Pinnacle was devastated, I would argue he went on a self-sabbatical, if you like, self-inscribed. I mean, it must have been heart-wrenching for him after putting all the work at Pinnacle to be evicted and to see the houses burned down, the Great House destroyed. So we also got to think about the personal turmoil it must have been for him. So yes, he was a recluse of sorts from the 60s and the 70s and so forth. But do you blame him after all the persecution he suffered? I think any normal human being would have become a recluse. So he was absent, notably when His Majesty visited Jamaica, but also he wasn't absent. Well, he wasn't absent. He was overlooked. He was overlooked, and yeah, he was overlooked. As was Hibbert, and as was Archibald Dunkley, because they never received any medals. Anyway, so moving on, let's take questions from the participants who are here. So I don't know if people could raise their hands. Well, I'm acting as the host. Let me just tell people I don't have the controls of the host. But I'm going to try and do the best I can. So if anyone has a question, we have a few minutes. Could we actually have hands raised? And I'm going to say, if somebody's asking a question, if people could actually just indulge me and switch off their mics so that we don't get all of the background noise that's coming in on the feed. All right, so if you're not speaking, just try to switch off your mic. So I'm trying to see if I see any hands raised right now. I'm not really seeing that. I just have to put this on full screen. Let's come here. All right. Yeah, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Can I ask Bill if he has a picture of his mother? I've never seen a picture of her.
Yes.
Yes.
You see the screen?
Yeah, yes. Put the picture up in front of the camera, Billy. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Put it up higher. Put it up higher. We can't. There we go.
Yes.
Right. There we go. Yes. Yes. All right. So that's Tenif Bent. That is
Yeah, Tenant Ben.
his mother. That Monty and Billy's mother. And so
Tell me
you
something.
said.
You see that photograph that was released with my mother and father? I cut Monty out those two photographs and Monty released them.
Yeah.
But they're not true photograph of the age. My father was over 50 when he took that photograph, and my mother was at this age. This is when they were married. He was 20 years older in the photograph that you see that both of them together.
Oh.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
All right. Yes. All right. So that was your artwork, your creativity on display. That, right. We don't have that many. We don't have that many pictures of Leonard Howell and your mother, but at least we do have some pictures. I have yet to see a picture of Robert Hines, by the way. So if anyone here has access to a picture of Robert Hines, that would be great. I mean, he played a great role in the propagation of the movement in the 30s, but he passed away relatively early, 1950. So whereas there are accounts of him, but I haven't really seen any pictures of him.
Can I say something about Hines? You know, Hines went and tried with my father.
Yes.
And when he was asked, where did he learn about Rasta? Where did he learn Rasta from? You know what his answer was? Leonard Howell. When the judge asked him, he said, where did you first hear about Rasta? Leonard Howell told me about it.
Yes, yes.
Read the transcript. Yes.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. It's a pity in a way, though, that after, you know, they served time in jail, that they went their separate ways. But they were a formidable team in the early years, from 1933 and 34. They were a formidable team. So that's good. But he made a strong contribution in his own right to the movement afterwards with his Kings of Kings mission. All right. So do we have? I don't know if I'm seeing the participants, but I'm not seeing any hands raised. So I don't know if that's an indication that nobody has any questions at this point in time to ask Ras Miguel alone or to ask Billy. Nobody, or even a chat message.
Some of the others could just just say what they have to say. A 2-minute presentation.
Well, it doesn't have to be 2 minutes, but all right, if anybody has, because we're running out of time, if everyone has a question or whatever, don't be shy. I would say just switch on your mic and just give the question. Let's just, you know.
Greetings.
Yes, greetings.
Yeah, this is Mutatu Selassie from out of Burning Strong, Birmingham, England.
Yes.
And I just want to heal up each and everyone, give thanks for the gathering. It's really a joy to hear Papa Oil, son, and Miguel on the presentations. It's really a joy and an honor. The points that I want to raise is number one, right? Rastafari and value. How much does Rastafari value I liberty, tradition, history, and honor those that paved the way for I here and now? One can just penny that. Reparatory justice. So I think, say that really and truthfully, Rastafari globally have to deal with reparatory justice, right? Which is reparations. Specifically in the Jamaican context, you have Pinnacle, you have Carragh Gardens, and you have a whole heap of other instances that one's supposed to be getting reparatory justice.
Bacawal is very serious. The Shantytown, very, very serious.
Yes.
Yes. So we have a list of them, my brother.
All right. So that's my point. My point is that is Rastafari have to aid their own reparatory justice claims. So that is one point. That is reparatory justice. Once we forward with it, National Heritage Trust. I see that Pinnacle is a World Heritage Site. And I think that ones need to approach it on that level that keep here talk about lots. 1 lot, 6 lots. It seems like ones don't know you over what lots and all these things, right? I've been to Pinnacle. It was a giant honor to go there, and I have seen the extent of the land. And it's bigger than just 1 and 6 lots. So I think that one should be aiming to get the whole of Pinnacle forward as a World Heritage Site for Rastafari, to acknowledge that it was the first Rastafari commune, from what I know, on planet Earth. And that needs to be honored and recognized globally. And then, yeah, I think that I hit that. Equal rights and justice, Pinnacle. Shashamane, all these land issues within Rastafari. Rastafari have to organize in those areas and claim reparative justice. Just like I will have to do here in England. Yeah, so each and everywhere a one is a front line for reparative justice, Rastafari.
Yes, I.
Greetings,
Yes, greetings, my sister.
Rastafari. I would just like to ask a question, please. I teach history, and I just want to know, is there a single article or book that you would recommend if you want to get the entirety of the biography of Leonard Howell? What's the best resource if you want to read it or share it with students?
Well, I'm going to be self-indulgent and promote the book that I co-edited with Jelani Naya and Clinton Hutton, which is Leonard Percival Howell and the Genesis of Rastafari, which came out of UE Press. But that's, you know, obviously I'm biased, but I would say that it's an exceptional read. And, you know, I know that Richard Hill had put out something on Leonard Howell, which Ras Miguel Lawn published along with Frontline. So you could probably speak to that, Ras Miguel.
Yes, you know, she could get that also. But and coupled with those that you have mentioned, the one written by Richard Hill, what's the name of it again? Dread History or something like that?
Yeah.
Right, Dread History. She could get that one written by Richard Hill, put out by Frontline and Head Start. And always try to get the Promise Key. The Promise Key really gives you an insight into Howell's mind at that time. And again, the introduction which I wrote to the Promise Key is a good little build-up to that. So if you get all of those, you're well on your way that you teach your class. Yep.
Also, I'll also mention Ellen's Lee book. If she really want to find out, you know, I mean, behind the scene thing, Ellen Lee book is
yeah, the first Rasta, yes.
The first Rasta.
Yes.
That's
also a good book to get.
That is what introduced my father to the world. Prior to that, I mean, his name was known. I mean, you know, we in Jamaica would know it, and you know, but I mean, his name was known. So she did a lot for the movement as well.
Okay.
I wrote a book, I should also say. I wrote a book, it was published in France. I tried at UE to get it, but we had some problem. I'm still in the process of having it being published in English. But it was written in French. It was written in English and then translated in French. So I am now seeking to, trying to get a publisher. A couple of times I think I almost got one, and then it turned out that it went all right.
All right, but Billy, on that note, reach out back to UE Press, because apparently they said they were trying to reach you. We had a discussion even in March, and they said So reach out to them and see what happens, and press on, you know. Yeah, but they were up that, you know, I met the managing director in March, in early March, and he said, you know, I gave him your number. So, but then we've had COVID, and we've had a lot's been going on. So I just want to relay that to you, but
Yeah.
I have the opportunity to do that. All right. Is there anyone else who has a question or perspective? While we're here, we're going to wrap up very soon. So, um, okay. Is that?
We can't hear her. She's saying
Can't
something.
hear.
Can't hear her.
Can't hear. You have to,
Ask her to repeat again.
yeah, please, whoever that was, repeat again. You have to sort out the audio. You have to, because we couldn't hear you. Couldn't hear you. Whoever had a, all right. Well, I guess anybody else before we look to wrap up? All right, I think that might be it for today. Well, I would like to say, thank you for joining us on this day, at least symbolically, for those who revere Leonard Howell, or respect and honor his contributions. It's important that we did do something to honor his legacy. So, and also very importantly, just to revisit the issue regarding Pinnacle, the Howellites, and the notion of cultural heritage, and both tangible and intangible, and so forth. So there's a lot to reflect on, I think. We got a various viewpoints, perspectives, and I think it was quite rich. I apologize for the technical issues at the beginning. I left that to the technical staffing to sort out. I have to tell you, I am not an expert with Zoom and so forth, but with everything, there are pluses and minuses. I know we celebrate technology and so forth, but there always can be glitches, and we have to bear this in mind. But for those of you who were patient and finally came on the forum, we give thanks. And I hope that you got something out of this forum and everything like that. I want to thank Billy Howell. I want to thank Ras Miguel Lorne for his contribution, and also Dr. Jelani Naya, who is heads up the Internal Reparations Subcommittee, and I'm also on the Internal Reparations Subcommittee. So thanks very much. And
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Oh. Yes,
I'm just seeing that there are some matters on the chat. I don't know if any of them at all were tackled, but I'm seeing some questions on the chat.
Okay, I'm really because we were hoping to have somebody to deal with that. Boom, 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 boom. Well, yes, this Zoom meeting, it was recorded. I got a question from Belize here. See, basically, okay, I'm trying to read this. Okay. Yes, somebody was asking about reparative justice for Rastafari Howellites in light of the 2015 amendment to the Dangerous Drug Act. Well, that's an issue that we never addressed. That's a good question, because actually that's the issue that involves the whole Rastafari movement, because it wasn't just the Howellites who were persecuted with the Ganja raid in 1954, but subsequently, even after Coral Gardens, especially when the incarceration time was upgraded, where you had a mandatory 5-year sentence for possessing marijuana. This was something that many Rastafari suffered, being incarcerated for just a spliff even. So it's something that's being discussed recently, that there should be some kind of reparatory justice for Rastafari as a whole for persecution for having and using the herb, which now has become a very lucrative industry, what we call the medical marijuana industry. So it's kind of paradoxical that something that people were incarcerated and persecuted for now has become a source of wealth. We call it green gold. But the Rastafari community are not benefiting or are not benefiting to any significant degree from this new lucrative industry. So there have been proposals, not formally, but it has been argued that Rastafari should not pay a licensing fee from the CLA to enter the medical marijuana industry and so forth, that some consideration should be made for the fact that Rastafari bore the brunt of persecution for this plant, for this natural herb that now people are seeing as a benefit. It's really quite remarkable that, you know, as even Peter Tosh, who sung Legalize It, who was persecuted for using the herb, and many, many members of the Rastafari community, that now we're in a new dispensation where it's seen as beneficial. So for those Rastafari who took the brunt of the batons, the beatings, the imprisonment, there should be some recognition nationally. There should be some kind of reparatory justice. I do believe that, certainly.
Just to add, Ras Mike,
yes,
that apart from the persecution, but the courts, the justice system in Jamaica, which is part of the government, because when you talk about trying 30-odd people, 50-odd people in one day before a court at Spanish Town and those type of things, there's no way that each individual could have gotten justice.
Right.
So we were treated. So things like that, you know, and just so on the table, those are reasons for reparatory justice to the Rastafari community.
Yeah, yes, good point, very good point. So I think we can leave it there for today, and hopefully there will be more forums on the issue of not just Leonard Howell, but internal reparations, at least as it concerns the Rastafari movement in general. So, because there's so much to discuss and so much to consider. All right, I want to thank everybody for being part of this gathering, of this virtual gathering, and I thank you very much. So I am just going to, you know, that's my vote of thanks to everybody. Thank you very much. Billy?
Thank everyone for being here, and hope one stay healthy. So good night, everyone.
Yes, dreadlocks Rastafari. Aile Selassie.
Yes, yes.
Yes, I give thanks, Michael, and for the ones who have convened for this purpose.
All right, yes, we give thanks. We give thanks. All right, so we're going to sign out now. So thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the day. And I know there'll be more commemorations of Leonard Howell's Earth Strong by other members of the Rastafari community out there globally. But thank you anyway for being a part of this forum, and we wish you a blessed evening and safety and health and everything that's good. Give thanks. Blessings.